I'm Steve Gilman, and this is Brand Story, where we help you build stronger, more sustainable brands. On this episode, join me in the Breakroom, where my co-host Lindsey Laughlin and I dive into the latest in brand and marketing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special episode of Breakroom. Lindsey, how's it going? Nice to see you.
Good. How are you doing, Steve?
Good. It's been a little while since we've done one of these.
It has been.
Yeah, I'm excited. I missed doing this, and I'm glad we get to just kind of kick back today and have a casual episode for our audience. And so I thought today, you and I talked about this a little. We're going to just talk about customer service. It's something you and I talk about a lot. So I think it'll make a great topic for us just to kind of chop up and talk about together today. And audience, I think just hang with us. We've prepared absolutely nothing. So we're just going to kind of roll through this and see where we get to. Thanks for listening in. So I wanted to kick this off just by kind of putting this out there. I think people think about service and customer service, but they forget about hospitality. And, service always feels like, okay, I'm just serving you. I'm going to do something for you. But I looked up the definition for hospitality, and I think people forget what it is. And it's the friendly and generous reception and entertainment of a guest, visitor, or stranger. So how do you think, because I think you and we talk about service a lot. I come from a hospitality background, but that entertainment of others, I've started immediately thinking about content and how you try to pull people into your brand and all those things. So how do you think about customer service?
To me, the thing that's interesting is I feel like when people hear customer service, they feel like, oh, well, that's just the part of our organization that answers the phones when people call in with a problem. And it's really not. It goes throughout the entire organization, and it really impacts every touch point that your customers have with your brand. And I think in order to have really good customer service that's consistent across all of those touch points, really comes down to how you treat your people. So if you don't have good internal service within your organization, your team members are not going to be able to take care of your customers to the degree that they should.
That's a great point. I think the silo and the image of what customer service is a big part of the problem, because I think people say customer service and they mean problem service, you know? And I think if you're thinking about customer service for real, you really need to be thinking about brand experience or brand service. Like, how are people going to experience our company or our brand or our services or our products holistically? How's it going to make them feel? And I think that gets overlooked, and you get a customer service department a lot like you get an HR department.
Absolutely. And I think part of it too is really teaching and reinforcing your employees on the level of service that's important and the type of brand experience you want people to have, because no two situations are going to be the same. So when a customer comes through the door, them being able to have the power to kind of ad lib or improv to provide that level of service. If typically they're supposed to do XYZ in a situation, but this one's a little bit different, and they know if they could do something a little extra for the customer, or maybe there's a better resolution, but maybe it's not the norm. If they are able to do that and provide that better service, that's going to resonate with people, but they have to know that they're able to do that. You have to teach them, and kind of just reinforce that, people come first, and they'll remember how you made them feel. They might not remember what the problem was at the end of the day or even what the resolution was, but they'll remember how you made them feel, and that's important.
I think, empowering people and even empowering yourself to go a little bit further and be human and see it as a relationship, has a lot to do with the culture, of course, of a brand or a company. But it does have a lot to do with what expectations are set with people and whether or not they feel like they have their permission to do a little something extra. Because you're right, it's never the same. Every single situation is completely unique. And the ones that we remember always are the ones where someone went a little above and beyond,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and some people don't need above and beyond. They just need quick, or they need, do you know what I mean? But like, there are those moments where you have the opportunity, and if you don't feel like it's okay, or you feel like if you're going to get in trouble if you do extra, that's a huge problem. And that goes way beyond a customer service department.
At the end of the day, everybody really just wants to feel seen, feel heard. So it could be as simple as when someone walks in the door, greeting them with a smile versus continuing about, whatever you're doing. And, we've all walked into stores and someone's giving us a friendly hello, and it just kind of makes you feel good about being there versus walking in the door and being ignored. So it can just be those little touches too. It doesn't even have to be some big extravagant gesture.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on something else that I think is really important is that good service, great service, hospitality, customer service, whatever you want to call it, however you want to label it in your company, it's 360. If you're in leadership in your company and you treat the people that work for you like shit, they're going to treat your customers like shit every single time, right? So I know like you're so great at this, but like looking for those extra moments where you can recognize someone doing little things, sometimes silly, sometimes meaningful, but the intention behind noticing people and making sure they feel seen, I think it makes your day better personally when you do that, but I also think it helps them a lot too.
I think so too. And it reminds me of the conversation that you had with Carrie Willits, one of the very first episodes of Brand Story. And uh, you both were talking about service. And I think it was Carrie that made the comment, if your customers are having a bad experience, it's because you have a culture problem. There's internal things that are going wrong. And that is just being passed on from your employees to the way they treat your customers.
Yeah, I mean, culture is brand. That's something that she said, and it's so true. So if your culture is mean, guess what? That's what your customers are getting. If your culture is greedy or abusive, that's what your customers are getting. And so that empowerment and that trust where someone that's dealing with a customer, we're not talking just retail, like people, business to business, all sorts of different situations deal with customers all the time. And if you don't feel empowered to notice and be kind, and if you're not treated that way, you're probably not going to do it, unless you're just inherently that kind of person. I think it's incredibly important. And I think about, Will Guidara is another one of our guests, one of my favorite podcast guests, period. Love his book, Unreasonable Hospitality. It's like, I think the best book on brand anyone's ever done, even though it's not a brand book. And he has a quote that's one of my favorites. And it's fads fade and cycle, but the human desire to be taken care of never goes away. I've read a lot of mission statements for companies, and I've read a lot of brand positioning statements. Man, if that's not the essence of your brand positioning statement or your mission statement, you might have a problem, because it's just not about you anymore as a company. It's really about the customer and helping them solve problems.
Yeah. And I think a lot of companies don't realize the power and the value in sharing those customer stories. I think it says a lot about your brand. So I think a lot, through their marketing, they try to feature product features or we've been in business for this many years and we have quality products. Come buy from us. And there's so much more that you can gain and share and kind of let people know about your brand and your organization by leaning into customer experiences and sharing those stories and being a part of that versus just talking about yourself.
It's really human, and who likes someone that shows up and starts talking about themselves and how great they are? And like if we hear, if you tell me about an experience you had with a company and you're telling me that they did something and it was amazing, you recently had an experience with, it's unlikely to get great customer service in like what pool repair you were having work done in your pool. But like you told me about that. Now, if I get a pool one day, which I want to do, I'm going to reach out to that company or that guy that helped you. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I thought that was a really cool story.
Yeah. So I got an above ground pool installed a few years ago and did not have a great experience with the company that did it. Didn't open the pool last year and decided to open it back up this year. And of course, it was quite green. And I am also quite green at trying to know how to, maintain a pool. So it was not going well. I reached out to the company that installed it, sent a request via their website, never heard back from them at all. So I stopped in, tried to get some help, and they just kind of brushed me off. It was not a good experience, made me feel a little crazy. And all I wanted was information. Um, if I had information, I would know what chemicals to buy, turn to them, like all of the things. And thankfully, I had a friend that knew someone who used to be a pool maintenance person. And he came over and helped and took the time not just to I thought I had an issue with the pump, not just check the pump, but actually teach me some things about how to maintain my pool better. I feel so much more informed and empowered to do a good job with it. The pool is now sparkling, clear, great, love it. So happy to have the pool. And I'm telling everyone about this guy that came over and looked at it, who does pool maintenance on the side, versus an established company that's been in business for years because one took the time to care and to help me, and one didn't. I still haven't heard from the pool company in response to my web form I sent a week ago, but the guy who came over last weekend to look at it has texted me to check in and make sure that everything was still going well. So, night and day difference.
Man, I'll tell you, personal service, like, it's so crazy because really what it comes down to is caring and just caring a little bit more. This is what amazes me is how many companies become so self-centered and are just about making the sale or getting what they want, or they get a big head and think that they are just the greatest, So they figure if they're so great, you're just going to love them. And man, it's just not about you as a company. It's about your customer, right?
I agree. And I think the other thing is, the pool company, there's one pool company in town, like in their mind, they probably don't have competition, so it's not a big deal. And I think a lot of times companies don't realize that they do have competition. It might not be another company that's a couple blocks away, but people always have choices. And they can get information, they can get products or services in a lot of different ways. And they may opt for a solution. I mean, I know we've talked about it, and you've had other guests on the podcast that have talked about jobs to be done. There's always another option for people to hire versus what you offer. So I just think that's really interesting and something to keep in mind.
People can make other choices. And you missing something like a web form that comes in, maybe they're busy and they feel like they don't have to, or maybe they don't have a system in place. But eventually companies like that usually end up coming to people like us and say, hey, our market share is down, we're losing business, we need to market. And one of the first things you and I always look at is, what's your service like? How are you treating people? You know, because any good marketing is human, and then the customer service, you can't have marketing that goes out and says you're great while your customer service stinks. We've all experienced that.
Absolutely. And I know you've had an experience in the past too, where you've had the opportunity to kind of provide a different level of service. And that's something it sounds like has really stuck with you and shaped the service that you provide now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of my favorite stories, and honestly, like how I actually met Will Guidara, the author of Unreasonable Hospitality, because I sent in the story, like he does this unreasonable hospitality in the world, and I sent it in and he featured it. And I think it was really where my passion for serving others and for customer service started. And you and I talk about it all the time because our company is so focused on not just getting things from our clients, but actually seriously showing up as human beings and helping. And that's what I care about in business. And it really started with this experience because I worked at a kind of a formal dining establishment. I was lucky enough to get trained and work in a place that was kind of fancy. And I was young, and they empowered us, but they didn't like really tell us, okay, you can do anything. But I just had this moment that I felt inspired, and so I did this crazy thing, and it made me realize that like hospitality really is about special moments, and you can do it in so many different ways. So basically, in short, what happened is I was waiting on a family, waiting tables. They came in. It was a special occasion, and they had this little kid with him. He's in his little bow tie, and he's excited, but he's really young, and they're celebrating some special thing, and they're starting to order. And his idea of a special dinner was McDonald's. So when it got to him, he wanted McDonald's. He was like, I want a Happy Meal. I want a hamburger. And they're like, no, 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 it's not that kind of place. It's really fancy. We'll get you a little steak. It'll be okay. We're trying to tell him. And he just burst into tears because he thought he was going out and he was going to get something special, which to him was McDonald's. So I ran into the back, told someone else to keep an eye on them, put the orders in, yelled at the chefs that I would be back in a few minutes, and I think they thought I lost my mind. I jumped in my car and like literally set a record driving to a McDonald's that wasn't far away. Bought him the Happy Meal with all the stuff and what he wanted, French fries and a little hamburger. Came back, and then the chefs got it right away. They plated it in this beautiful thing with doilies and the big, silver cloche. And man, when I brought it out, I served everyone else first. He still was just sitting there pouting. He was just crushed, Set it down, and when I took it off and he saw the McDonald's stuff, he just started clapping his hands and like he was so happy, and his whole family got a little teary. And I think what I learned that day is, yeah, I can't do that for everybody. But man, when you have the moment to do the extra thing, do the extra thing. Like people remember. And those people, I worked at that restaurant for a while. Those people came back and requested me over and over and over again. They told that story to hundreds of people, and that helped that restaurant, and that restaurant grew. Not just because of that. It was a great restaurant with great service and great food, but those moments are what matter. So, was there anything formative for you, like in customer service, that makes you want to take care of people and do things like that?
One of the things that stands out, so in college, I catered at the president's house. And just, similarly learning how to formally serve people, but understanding that in those moments, it wasn't about the food we were serving or the drinks we were serving, but it was making sure that those people had a good experience. And all of the little touches, I didn't have an opportunity to go to McDonald's and get anyone anything. I love that story. I think that's so cool. Um, but just recognizing the guests that were there, making them feel special, but also noticing, we would be in the public areas of the president's house, but then also in the private areas where his kids were sitting at, the dining room table kind of off their kitchen doing their homework and interacting with them and making them still have a sense of normalcy because their house was used as an event space for university, and here's a group of little kids like trying to do their homework or like hang out in their house. So kind of balancing that and just learning how you can literally go from back of house to front of house in a split second, and you can communicate with both groups of people and make each group feel seen and heard and special, in that space, and kind of learning how to flip between those two sides. And we use that terminology here a lot too with front of house and back of house. Um, and that it's not necessarily that one group is more important than the other or has more value than another. It's really understanding both sides and giving each side what they need. And that was something I think was always just really interesting to me.
I bet that was really formative. And I mean, that's so cool. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that front of house, back of house mentality is also, it has a degree of like learning how to care for people and their experience instead of yours. So I don't know how many times you've been in a restaurant and had a waiter come out and complain about their job, or you're in a retail store and someone's like, "Yeah, this place, man. Go to Best Buy. The employees will complain about Best Buy to you." But part of front of house, back of house is realizing that like you said, you can switch between front of house and back of house in an instant, and really that's what you were doing for those kids too. You didn't go back and complain about the thing that was going on in their home. You tried to make them comfortable. And I think that's really extraordinary, because that's one of the tricks, is not bringing your back of house concerns and dumping it in the customer's lap. And that takes so many different forms. You can do that in consulting, you can do that at any kind of service where you make it their problem instead of your problem.
Absolutely. And I think too, in the type of business that we have, our front of house is interacting with all of our clients, and our back of house is interacting with our creative teams. And our clients need to have a level of trust with us that they can just, if they're looking at a design and there's something that just feels off to them, they need to be able to say, this just doesn't feel right. Maybe I can't verbalize it, but can we try again? It didn't quite land this time. But if I were to take that exact feedback and give to my creative team, it wouldn't be super helpful for them and could hurt their feelings. So it's learning how to translate, and provide feedback in a way that people need to hear it. That's actually going to help get to the result. So you end up with a good product all the way around.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many analogies to restaurant service and any other kind of business that I almost wish that anyone that's in any kind of service industry, and I think we all are now, would have worked in restaurants. Because, you have to do that with chefs too. If you take something back or something's wrong, Chefs can be a little emotional. So sometimes the way you tell them about it, you got to think about it, Same thing with anyone that's creative. And then I was thinking about something else when you said that, because a lot of our back of house, quote unquote, people here also end up on client sites doing production work and filming and interacting with an awful lot of people or interviewing them. And I've worked places where, or been around people where there was no trust, like how they'd represent, you know? And I know for our team, like, it doesn't even cross my mind. I know that people are going to have a great experience with them, you know? And so it's like they also have this sense of front of house, back of house. Like, if you're on a shoot and you have a problem with a light, you don't immediately tell the person you're about to interview that you're having a problem with the light. You just quietly fix it, and go about your business. That's really cool. I'm so glad that you brought that up. Feels really great when you get good service, doesn't it? Like, we all like it. So it's crazy that more of us don't want to give it. But is there any really positive or negative customer experience you've had lately that you feel like you learned from?
So this is maybe a minor example, but there is a cute little shop downtown that I like to go to that had some issues, gosh, maybe a year ago at this point, and had to move out, and they just recently moved back into their space. And so I went down, for kind of their reopening, and was talking with the owner, who's the sweetest person. And they were having trouble with their Wi-Fi. So when I tried to pay for my purchase, it didn't go through. So we tried like 3 or 4 times. And the shop is maybe a block from the office. And by the time I got back to my office, I had a call and a voicemail from the shop owner who was very distraught because she wanted to double check and make sure that the payment went through properly and I didn't get charged extra. And I did. And so she called to let me know immediately that she had reversed the charges. Everything was okay, but she felt so bad. Let her know. And just that level of, like, she wouldn't have needed to do all of that. She had fixed the problem, could have let it slide on. I mean, she wouldn't have even had to double check. She could have just trusted that the system worked. Um, but I thought it was just the sweetest thing. It was just that little extra level of caring, to kind of check in. And she said, I think in her voicemail, about how great it was to see me and how much she appreciated me stopping by. And she felt so bad that this had happened. And it was a minor, like, it didn't impact me at all, kind of what had happened, but her kind words did. And so, that just reinforced, whenever I think of that little shop, I think of the owner and just how personable she is and how positive she is. And that's the brand association in my mind. And so that experience of her calling and leaving that really sweet message just reinforced that. So I thought that was really sweet of her to do.
That's amazing. Like, yeah, those little things, like just taking the care, because so many times I think what people do is they see, oh, well, the payment, it got fixed. The person will see it. Whatever. They'll be fine. And when you think about just doing that extra little bit of communication, leaving the message, sending a thank you card, giving a gift that someone doesn't expect, any of those things are so incredible.
What about you?
So I was sitting here thinking, like, I was listening to your answer, and I thought, man, she's going to ask me that question. I wonder if I have one. And I do, actually. I had this extraordinary thing happen that when I was out in Las Vegas in April and got food poisoning, and I got real sick. And then I had a reservation at a place that I love to eat at. It's Sadel's, and it's like it's so crowded in the mornings you have to make a reservation. So I had a reservation there. Well, I woke up the next day still sick, a little better. And so I just texted them and let them know I wouldn't be there. And they were like, oh, that's a shame. And then they actually asked, like, are you okay? Which was like, I was like, I'm just canceling a reservation, but I know them and they know how much I love the place. And I was like, I got sick. I got food poisoning. So, I'm not going to come down to a restaurant and eat. The general manager of the restaurant dropped off oatmeal and every other bland food and ginger ale at my door in a little bag with a little card, saying that he hoped I felt better. Didn't ask for it, nothing. And honestly, that oatmeal saved my life. Like, I felt so much better. I didn't eat it for a while, but finally I felt like I could eat a little something. I ate a little bit. But, he went out of his way, got like plain oatmeal, like all the things you would want if you were ill, some crackers, some literally like saltine crackers, put it in a little bag with a little note, and came off and the rooms are really far away from where this restaurant is, went way out of his way and dropped on my door and just knocked briefly and left. And I was like, man, That's good service. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So, it's kind of the same thing. Doing the extra thing and caring about someone makes all the difference. And it's memorable. As soon as you do something that's memorable, like I'll be loyal to that restaurant for the rest of my life after that. I already was. That's what's crazy, But now it's like that. It's just such a special place to have people that would go out of their way like that.
And I think what you said is really key. When you give someone, if someone has good experience with your brand, they're not just going to buy from you again, but you built loyalty. You've made a little brand ambassador, and they're going to tell people, they're going to refer people to you, and you can't replicate that.
No, you really can't. You just yeah, and it's so much fun to do. I wish people would understand that more. Like, I talked to him afterwards. He's like, "Oh, I was happy to do that. That's what I love about my job." And it's like anytime we get to do something special, it also makes you happy, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of my job is getting to find those little things that we can do for clients. Whether it's sending them something to, celebrate a milestone that they just achieved, or, just something random kind of out of the blue that we saw and made us think of them. I love being able to do that.
Yeah, it's really fun, isn't it? So thanks for doing this today. This was a great conversation. I think we should just keep coming back and doing like single topic. And this was so much fun because it was so positive, and I love talking about. I could talk about this all day.
I agree. And I hope that people will find us on LinkedIn whenever we share this and share some of the experiences that they've had, because I've seen people share some on LinkedIn, and it is just so heartwarming. And I love to see all the things that people do.
I think the more we're all out there trying to do little things and care for each other, the better off we are. Want to hear more inspiring stories? Subscribe on your preferred podcast app so you don't miss an episode. And if you like what we're doing, please rate, review, and share. It's the best way to support us. Thank you for listening to Brand Story.